Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Directors reconvened meeting of last Tuesday to be held here the 29th of May at 4 o'clock. The purpose as an executive session to further discuss the evaluation of our employees, specifically the city manager. At this time, there has been some requests because we have people out to defer this, and I bring that up to those that are sitting here, and thought I would go ahead and get this issue out of the way one way or the other. So, is there? Yes. Oh,
You'll call the roll.
hit the button.
Mr. Mayor, as you pointed out, we have three of our members out on business, and I think in fairness to our employees, we can't conduct an efficient review of them with that small a group. So I would move we defer this executive session until the 2 weeks from tonight, Tuesday, the next agenda type, Tuesday, June 12th.
June 12th, a special meeting for June 12th?
Right.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Okay.
Move we adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn our recess meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. We're adjourned on that meeting. Let me see if I can get this microphone system to work. Well, let's recognize the roll for the meeting. I think you can take notice of Director Wright, Director Adcock, Director Fortson, Peck, Richardson, Hendricks, and Campuris. You want to read their names? You feel more comfortable doing that?
Okay.
Mr. Carpenter, does that suffice?
Mayor, there's no objection, so yes.
Thank you. There we go. Somebody's been up here working on the system, so I'm trying to get it fixed first. Thank you. All right, I think we're good now. Okay, we can move on now to the Board of Directors agenda meeting. And we will have a presentation on next Tuesday dealing with a housing study update based on some representatives that were with us, I guess, a few months ago. Lita Anthony and some others with Neil Seeley, ACO, I believe, we're looking at a housing study, and they're going to be making a presentation to us next Tuesday. Based on our discussion last Tuesday, the city manager would like to add M1 as an ordinance which has to do with the property on Martin Luther King Drive that had been condemned, and we were going to discuss giving them some additional time for that property. Mr. Carpenter, you drafted up this ordinance, and would you just explain to us how much time is being provided for them to be able to bring this property into compliance with our codes?
Mayor Stodel, of the night of March the 20th of 2018, two particular items were presented to y'all for some delay in order to do something. This one was not given any deferral, but the other one was given 9 months. So I mirrored that, made it 9 months from this date. There's a provision in there that deals with having to be constantly in work after a certain point, and also there's a provision in there as to what happens if they really haven't done any substantial progress by the first of the year.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Carpenter? Yes, Director Hendricks, go ahead, please.
Tom, I want to ask you, did you say 9 months?
Yes, ma'am.
That's too long.
That, I don't have any,
Well,
I don't have
where did
any-
you get the 9 months from?
the 9 months came from the fact that the same night that you initially denied any relief to this house, you gave 9 months to another person who had asked for relief to avoid the demolition of their structure.
The other person, are you talking about the young lady that came here?
No, I'm talking about an entirely different structure.
Oh, you're comparing this with something else.
I went back and looked at the entire tape for the last meeting of the board, and then I looked at the entire tape for the March 20th meeting of the board as it dealt with demolition, and I just treated this one the same way that y'all treated the other one,
And what was the other one? Can you remember?
not off the top of
Do
my
you know
head.
whether it was a family affair in the other?
I think it was a commercial structure, but
No, I mean the situation with the family. Do you know whether in this
I
building?
don't remember that
Well,
right
then,
now.
that's a bad comparison because the church has been fighting about that building. There is a division within the family. There is no money to be spent on this building. And I'm just going to object to that 9-month period. I think
And
within
I think
at
that's,
least,
I think that's appropriate. I just need to know what month to put in there. I mean, nobody gave me any guidance, so I drafted an ordinance based
because
upon
I-
what you'd done that night, and,
so I'm asking that we do, give her at least 4 months. There is no money there. There's a fight in that family. I know all about that family. I would say it if she was standing here, and I represent that church. And the church, were you aware, Tom, you may not be, that there's no parking for that building?
no.
It's none whatsoever. I meant to call Jamie, but I didn't bother him. But the church can tell you that they have no parking, no money. I just don't see that. And I'm speaking as the ward director of the people that live in that area. So I don't know whether you all would, the other board members would sit here. Tom, do you remember the house that was historic on Cantrell that was torn down? Since I've been on this board,
I think,
it was a beautiful structure. Do you remember, Bruce? Yeah, they took it down. So I'm asking 4 months.
okay.
We had extensive discussion last week, and Mr. Carpenter, is that the information that you reviewed as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, if there's no objection, put 4 months in there as opposed to the 9 months, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, if we will look over items 1 through 12. And let me ask if there are any questions that the board members have for staff on any of these resolutions. 1 through 12. Director Adcock, you're recognized,
I
please.
have one on item number 3.
Go ahead, Director Adcock.
Mr. Collins, I want to know why Woodson Street is still on here. I thought all of the, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, it wasn't Mr.
Mr.
Collins, it was Mr. Honeywell.
John.
Mr. Honeywell, why is Woodson Street still on here?
The one remaining parcel that we have left, we have a facsimile copy of a signed document. We do not have original signatures at this time. We've been waiting for those to come from the owner. They did send us the facsimile copy, so at this time, we don't plan to move forward with any kind of eminent domain action. We're waiting on that document, but if the document never shows up, we need to have some ability to be able to get
That's the
that
one
as well.
coming from California by way of Mexico?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, have you talked to the family again?
Yes, we have.
Okay, and what are they saying?
Don't know what our response from them has been at this time.
Okay. Okay, I was just wondering because there was 4 on here and I thought we had taken care of all of them.
Well, and that was my understanding also, and when I talked to staff the end of last week, we have the facsimile copy of a signed document, but we would prefer to have an actual original signature when it comes to obtaining these documents.
Okay, if you receive that before next Tuesday, will this be removed, please?
Certainly, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Director Wright, you're recognized.
Yes, Mayor, I have questions on 2 items.
Okay, go ahead,
The
please.
first one is number 6. I'd like some information on the procurement of process on this item, Mr. Moore. and if we had any other options other than this, and is this the best price, and what is the ongoing cost going to be once we make the initial purchase?
Let me ask Captain Ken Temple to come forward.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Captain, good to see you, thank you.
How y'all?
You wouldn't wait till I put my cracker in my mouth.
So the question centers around, did we look at any other technology? As you know, there are a lot of different technologies out there, different companies, so kind of the process we went through.
We submitted bids for that through purchasing, and there were two companies that submitted a bid, and one was gunshot detection, and the other was Convergent
We
Technologies.
can't hear you.
I'm sorry. We submitted a bid, competitive bid through the purchasing. There were only two companies who responded. It was Convergent Technology and Gunshot Detection, ShotSpotter. ShotSpotter was the lowest bid, so that was the bid that we're requesting.
What's the ongoing cost after we make the initial purchase of this?
It's $250,000 for 1 year. We're trying to get 2 years, so it'll be $290,000. So we're going to try to identify $40,000 from asset forfeitures to pay for the second year of the contract.
And so after that second year, you gotta go back and pay another $250,000?
No, ma'am. There's a maintenance fee for that. I don't have it right here with me, but there is a annual fee that goes along with the ShotSpotter being able to stay into the city. We have a 2-year grant that we were paying this for, the TIPS grant. So we had $250,000 of, I believe it was $479,000 that was allocated to buy a gunshot detection type equipment. So we put a bid out for that for the 2 years of the grant.
Okay,
The bid was for 2 years, ended up being $290,000. So we are requesting that the additional $40,000 to be paid at the start of the second year of the contract would come from asset seizures.
okay. But after that, the ongoing maintenance is what I'm concerned about. I understand how you got there with that price.
The ongoing maintenance beyond the grant period. There is an ongoing cost, that the city will be responsible for picking up.
How
At
much?
that point. I believe it'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of the 250, but I'm not sure.
$250,000 every year?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's gonna come out of your budget?
That's gonna come out of my budget, yes.
Okay.
Or the city's budget. My budget is your budget.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about some other things we need to do.
So, Mayor and members of the board, obviously, this is the grant we applied for and received. It is a 2-year commitment through federal funds. And then we'll evaluate, I think, has it been effective? I've known one city that has publicly said it's the best thing that they've implemented as far as gun violence. So, obviously, anytime we apply for these things, I monitor and see, what the ongoing cost would be if we continue to utilize that. As you all know, when we first started talking about this, the technology's changed since then. So it's an evolving area.
And let me mention, after this 2-year period of time, we are in some discussions with some of our internet providers that are working on a variety of smart city applications. And one of them is an agreement that they already have with ShotSpotter, which they provide as part of a variety of things that they can provide to cities pursuant to our franchise. We have not made any decisions on that yet, but it's certainly attractive to know that if we are working on some of these smart city applications, that they already have an agreement with ShotSpotter, which would expand its coverage, as a matter of fact, to other parts of the city as well. So, again, that's in the future after this 2-year grant, but I did want you all to know that there's a great opportunity there, I think, for us to be able to really tie into some of these smart city applications that a variety of our private sector internet providers are providing to cities around the country.
Well, I would, Mr. Moore, like staff to do whatever they need to do to make sure that that opportunity does not pass us by. Because I can see a lot of other things that we could spend $250,000 a year on, other
Right.
than this.
And I should have mentioned that other option and or possibility that the mayor mentioned, because that's new to us as far as a concept.
Well, I like that anyway. I understand, Chief. I just have to ask these questions when I'm,
No, it's a valid and intelligent question. I mean,
Yeah.
the ongoing cost is, something we always have to look around the corner and see. I will tell you that, we don't know what this technology will cost 2 years from now.
Right.
In most cases, it goes down.
It will, hopefully.
And they will certainly want to do what they can to keep it, in our city. But I can tell you that cities that have many of the challenges that Little Rock has, have spoken very positively about the impact that this has made on their community, specifically with violent crime.
Okay, now I got one other question, and this is my procurement hat, because I do understand the process. Comparing apples to apples, the bid that was not accepted, what was the ongoing maintenance cost of that? Was it comparable, or was it less?
No, ma'am, it was much, much more. I should have brought that, but I didn't. I can get that and send it to you tomorrow in an email. Convergent technology was, I'm just gonna throw this figure out. I think it was double,
Okay,
pretty close to that. It may even been a little bit more as
Well-
far as the acquisition of the system. The difference between Convergent and ShotSpotter is we won't own the ShotSpotter sensors. We would own the Convergent, but it would have taken like 8 years or 7 years before the matrix would have reached to where the cost would have been effective for us to keep that. So we
Okay.
would have been paying out $300,000 or $400,000 a year more than it was for ShotSpotter. Plus, ShotSpotter is in 100 major cities, New York, Chicago, and they have proven track records there that we had checked on. Convergent is fairly new, and the test city they kept talking about was Chattanooga. And that's a much smaller city, and we didn't have nearly the data to compare that with.
and Mr. Moore, because of the amount of this software, this had to be a sealed bid? Or was it a sealed bid?
It was a.
It was, yeah.
Okay.
At the direction of Mr. Carpenter, it was not a sole source, because there are multiple companies that offer a gunshot detection type of equipment out through there. ShotSpotter was, along with Convergent, were the only two bids that we received.
Okay, and once we do a sealed bid, I know we have to deal with the companies that respond to the bid. And just because there is one out there that might be, quote, better than this, doesn't mean that we can just say, okay, we're gonna use you even though you didn't bid, so.
No, ma'am, in the
Okay.
pre-conference bid, I believe there were 5 companies that actually, we sat in and they called in questions.
good.
And I believe only 2 of those only 2 did submit the bid.
Okay, okay, thank you.
And also, to note, ShotSpotter is a part of a comprehensive package, for this kind of technology. The camera system that we have in our city, there are roughly 50 cameras that we have strategically placed in our city, and also license plate readers. So imagine a shot going off in an area, and then us being able to look at camera system and license plate readers, trying to see what the common denominators are for the shots being fired in our city, to give you kind of a visual as to how this will work.
Okay. Okay, as long as the procurement process was followed, I think that we're okay, and I'd rather not pay $250 a year, so hopefully we can get that smart grant or whatever the mayor's talking about. Y'all, I know you're gonna be on top of it, Chief.
Yes.
Very good.
Good. Okay, Mayor, I got one more. Number 11. Mr. Moore, this is regarding the first T, for their HVAC. Would not the allocation that we provide to them, would that not be the money that they would use for that?
That's right. That's operational support. This is capital. So this was our.
Now, we own this building?
We do.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Did other directors want to speak to the first T issue? Okay, go right ahead. Director Pierce?
Could y'all come back up one more time, please?
Oh, you wanted to speak to the ShotSpotter, okay.
Yeah, now go through this again. This is a grant, right?
Yes, sir.
So is the grant for the whole price of the apparatus
Contract?
contract?
No, sir, the grant was Technology, Innovation, and Police Services, a DOJ grant, and it had some major components. One was the gunshot detection. The other is an intelligence-based IBM analyst notebook. Those are our two big items. Y'all have already passed the IBM analyst notebook, that was $150,000. The $250,000 in the grant for the gunshot detection equipment is what this particular proposal is for.
So, but out of pocket, going back to what Doris was saying, for the first 2 years, this is a grant, right?
Yes, sir.
With an additional $40,000.
Right, I know, but I'm talking about the first 250 for
Yes,
is a grant.
Yes, sir.
So when we talk about this, it sounds like we're taking $250,000 or $290,000 out. Really, what we're finding is $40,000 to have 2 years of apparatus.
That's
sir.
correct, to test.
And then what Mark is saying is, hopefully there's a way of figuring out how to maintain this over this period of time. So I don't want people to go out thinking that we've now put out, we applied for a grant, we're being smart, we got a grant okayed, we've gotten the first year of it, we're putting it in $40,000 to get it for 2 years. So it's smart use of money. It's smart use of our grant funds. I mean, it just got lost in here somewhere that it sounded like we spent $290,000 that we didn't spend.
Good point.
No,
And also, sir, just me trying to forecast, look around the corner, this was a part of the Violence Reduction Network program that we were in for the past 2 years. We complete that here in September of this year for our third and final year. One of the things that we have grown in an area is our ability to go out and get grants. So I expect us to get better with that.
Well, that's what I want to compliment you on. We don't say thank you for go out and finding somebody that's going to give us a $250,000 piece of implementation that'll help us take care of our city. I mean, we ought to be saying thank you instead of, sounding like we're giving y'all a hard time. And I know Doris wasn't trying to give you a hard time, but we procured this with grant money.
Yes.
And that's the important thing that people need to realize, that y'all are being smart and working towards better detection of problems, and we're doing it through grant money, and we're the beneficiaries. So, thank you.
Yeah, this was part of, also referenced in the Little Rock for Life plan as well, as one of the grants we're going after is this gunshot detection stuff. I mean, it's good. We got them. We were going to be aggressive about getting them, and we're very successful in getting a lot of money from the Department of Justice on it. So, yeah.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, Director Richardson, you're next, please.
Yes, Chief Captain, one more time. I'm gonna let you guys sit down. Listen, this was secured through RFP, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we had the lowest responsive bid.
Yes, sir.
Were there any other allowable uses for these funds?
No, sir, in the grant, it was written up for gunshot detection. There was a part for the link analysis software. There was a part for some UALR partnership for us. And specifically, those were earmarked for those particular areas only.
So the uses are pretty much married to our
It
plan?
is, sir, and it's all part of kind of a comprehensive assessment of our city, our challenges, and our police department, and our abilities. So looking at cities that have had success with violent crime, there have been a number of different things that have been suggested that LRPD do or at least subscribe to in order to try to have traction with that. This was a part of kind of a technology assessment of our agency. Crime analysis is also another one that we've done, and this is just another piece of that.
Great. I want to echo Dean's thanks for going out finding funding to enhance our ability to police and monitor our city. So I want to echo Dean's thanks with respect to you guys going out finding funding to do this.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, other questions on items 1 through 12? Any other questions on items 1 through 12? If not, then we can move on to the separate items on our agenda. I would like to mention, before we do that, though, I'd like to mention item 12. We've got a document from the Jefferson Comprehensive Care System, and Sandra Brown, the Chief Executive Officer, is here to answer any questions if you have them. But this is going to be a full-service medical facility that is going to be in Jericho Way, in the ground floor of that. I believe it's going to be, Sandra, help me, how large a facility is it in terms of square footage? About
Close to 1,400 feet.
1,400 square feet, full service 5 days a week.
Yeah, 5 days a week, Monday through Fridays.
Do you want to come up and give us a briefing on it, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and to the board. It will be a full-service primary care clinic. It is no different than going to your own primary care physician. Currently, we're open Mondays 8 to 7 and Tuesdays through Friday 8 to 5. It's staffed with a full-time nurse practitioner as well as a registered nurse, MA, front desk person. We are completely electronic health records, so therefore it's into the network with all our systems. We're working to get a van for the Little Rock area, so that means in fact, they're getting bids now. If patients needs to get to College Station for x-ray, we'll be able to get them over there. Of course, we send them now to university, but we will provide all the services, and we have a full-time dentist at College Station Health Center, so we'll be able to also help them with dental needs. One of the things is with this clinic, all other primary care clinics, we charge a copay based on your income. And of course, we take all insurances, so anyone can go to any of the clinics, but this clinic is with the homeless, is that they don't pay a copay. We can't say we are a free clinic, but at the same time, they don't pay a copay. So yes, it's free, but it's not free, if you understand me. We do ask if they,
have insurance or some
if a
form.
lot of them have disabilities, we'll just bill it, but we can't collect a copay because they are homeless. And if they don't have a formal address, we have to use the address of the clinic. So, they provide comprehensive care, and it's a fully licensed credentialed staff.
And so the lease is for up to 20 years, and you're spending around $200,000 to improve the facility for your needs.
Yes. The mayor and I have been working on this for a long time.
About 3 years, yeah.
And trying to find monies, and I told him what we invest in paying rent. If he would help me on that end, we could do things differently. So he agreed to it, and it'll be a win-win. We're the population, and we feel like we could better served and to be there. And that was the goal in that old 10-year mayor's plan, is to have a medical clinic. So, and we're looking forward to it, and we're excited.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Adcock.
How long a lease do we have for Jericho Way?
But we own the building.
I know we do, but how long do we have a contract for Jericho Way to be there?
Paul, I'll have to get that for you. It's either 5 or 7.
'Cause I'd hate
And
to
it can
think
be
that
renewed.
we have the clinic there and we do not have DePaul to take care of the homeless people.
No, I think the city's fully committed to that location, so I don't see that going away.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we can move on to items 13 through 15. Condemnation ordinance on 13. Our agreement with City Year AmeriCorps in item 14. And then Director Richardson's ordinance concerning the issue of misdemeanor marijuana offenses. Director Wright, question.
My question is not on these homes, it is on item number 14.
All right, go ahead, please.
Mr. Moore, I'm confused, and I admit that I'm confused. But there seems to be so many AmeriCorps, and it's always up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we are putting into this, but I'm not clear on where we're doing it. It says here for use by the Little Rock School District. Didn't we just approve something in March or April that was a couple of $100,000 that was going to the district as well for something similar to this? Can I get an explanation, or can somebody paint me a picture of what we're doing with AmeriCorps or some of this money that we're putting into the district? I'm just not clear.
And there are two components of AmeriCorps that we're currently engaged with. One is actually in the housing department, and this one, again, City Year is a part of AmeriCorps also. I think one of the largest components of AmeriCorps is City Year. So it's really two separate types of pools of money. The Lower Rock School District is a big supporter financially. These are the individuals you might see in the red jackets, mentoring in the schools every day. So that's sort of the breakdown.
So the City Year is an AmeriCorps project
Program, correct,
that we put money into,
correct.
and then we have the one that's out of the housing department where they're doing the work on the homes. Then what was the one that we just put, I think it was $240,000 or $50,000 in April or something? And it had something to do with gardens at schools?
Oh, that's the one, that Mr. Drake,
Well, what is that one? Is that AmeriCorps too?
No.
no, it's not.
Okay, well, what is that one?
I'll have to get it's called the Love Your School program.
That's done through the University of Arkansas.
ULR.
Okay, can you get me some information on that? I know you all said there was these gardens at each school. I'd like to name a summary of what the program is, which schools they're at, and what will our funds do, and what the parameters and so forth.
Okay, so we'll give you a good profile of all three different components of it.
Okay, so AmeriCorps, the housing, and then the Love Your School.
Okay, Love Your School is not,
Two of them AmeriCorps,
Right.
and one of them is not.
right,
Okay. It's kind of running together on me. I'm not gonna.
I understand.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, let me ask Director Richardson if he'd like to speak to ordinance 15. Go ahead, Director Richardson.
Yes, Mayor. I think I sent an email out to you guys asking for input and feedback on this particular item because I wanted to recognize that there's a need to deprioritize marijuana arrests for our police department for a number of reasons. Looking at the impact it's having on our jail population, looking at the impact it's having on our underemployment rate, one's ability to get education, because if you have a conviction, you can lose a Pell Grant for up to 1 year, or for 1 year or more. And also, those who are poor, who don't have access to legal representation, end up with a higher conviction rate than those who have access to resources. And I think it has a disproportionate impact on the number of black males in our jail system. So it's something, Mayor, I want to move forward with. Been working with the city attorney on this for a couple of months now, and I sent an email out to you guys last week for asking for feedback and input. I received none, so I'm assuming that everybody thinks it's fine and dandy, and let's move forward with it.
Well, I don't know whether that means that people are still reviewing it or whether they wanted to ask you questions during this meeting today. So
Either way, it's fine.
I probably wouldn't go so far as to make those presumptions at this point in
Well,
time.
Mayor, I was being facetious, of course. But it's not legitimizing, it's not decriminalizing, it's not legalizing it. It's lowered on the list of priority for our Little Rock Police Department. And I've been told that that's our current approach by a number of people. And when I've been told that, I've asked for a written policy that outlines that, and I've yet to see one. So if it's part of our current approach, it's up to the discretion of the officer. I mean, two different individuals could have two different outcomes with the same officer, which is somewhat problematic for me.
Well, again, well, I can speak from the experience I've had as a prosecutor. Oftentimes, a quote misdemeanor marijuana offense will be coupled with substantially other charges that are more serious. number one. Number two is I think it, and I think somebody was doing the research on it, I think there are very, very few people who are in the jail on a singular misdemeanor marijuana charge. And
Could we have
fundamentally,
the-
it's really not the police officer's responsibility. It's the prosecutor who makes those decisions on whether or not something is given priority or low priority. I can tell you that historically, since I was the prosecutor and before I was prosecutor, and I know following that misdemeanor marijuana violations are given a very low priority from the prosecutor's office. So that's
From
what,
a policy standpoint, Mayor, from an individual, if I had another individual as a prosecuting attorney, would Jegley have that same approach? Is there something that mandates him that, or is that something that's solely up to your discretion?
you know, prosecutors have absolute discretion relative to the persistence on filing charges and continuance charges, and they guard that that authority given to them by state statute very jealously, and they don't think it's the province of the city board or a city council to invade the province of their discretionary authority to either pursue a case or not pursue a case. I'm just telling you, that's historically what the situation's been in our jurisdiction.
Well, I look forward to the conversation. I will say this, though, Mayor. We continually say that public safety is our number one priority, and a number of people who are both perpetrators and suspects of a lot of violence in our community, they're not gang involved, unlike the 90s when we had gang involvement. A lot of it's centered around finances, and a lot of it is compounded by a lot of those folks who are disconnected or don't have employment or education or unemployment, underemployment, and I think it leads to a lot of the violent activity we're seeing in our community right now.
Well, again, I'm just indicating that I know, following your presenting this, that the prosecuting attorney had contacted me and indicated he was not in favor of the city proceeding in this way. He was giving me his opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect him, nor would I expect our police department or our FOP or not many people to support this. This is not something I think anybody's going to embrace with open arm and run towards. I think it's a different way of things, it's a different way of approaching things. I think that I wasn't expecting that, Mayor, so that's not a surprise.
It looks like we got several board members that wish to speak on this or ask questions.
Sure.
Director Wright, you're next, please.
Yes, sir. I don't know if this is a question for Director Richardson or whether for the police chief, but I would like to know exactly how this would work. Because I've heard over the years that typically when you're arrested, these charges are stacked on top of charges, and so you may not be arrested for the marijuana that's added on after the fact. Now, I can assure you I have very little involvement with the police, so I don't know. So I have no firsthand experience here, so I'm trying to figure out how would this work. So if I have marijuana and I get stopped, and what are you saying? I wouldn't get arrested, or because I got the marijuana, or I don't understand how it would work. Who can explain that? I mean, and I'm not being facetious. I don't understand how that would work, because if you stop me pretty much because I'm speeding or I did something that you didn't think I should have done in my car, and then you might determine in the course of that traffic stop, oh, she got marijuana. Okay, I'm not going to arrest her for that. I'm going to give her a ticket. Or do I take her to jail for the marijuana and give her a ticket anyway? I mean, how does that work?
I think the concept came, or the one that this is modeled off of, came out of a referendum in Fayetteville. And the concept basically is this is not going to be a priority. If we come across something, I think it's letting the officers use their discretion as to whether or not to charge for simple possession. And I can't address how the chief would deal with that. I would think that you know, you mentioned a speeding ticket. I mean, anytime you have a speeding ticket, you've got probable cause for a search incident to arrest the entire automobile, I suspect if we searched all the automobiles, we'd probably find all kinds of stuff that are contraband, including drugs, and this would probably, absent anything else, would probably try to say that it's the policy of the city that if it's all we're looking at is an adult, meaning an 18-year-old using marijuana, we're not going to worry about it too much. If it's something else, we will. Above 4 ounces of marijuana, and I don't know if anybody on the board knows how many cigarettes that would make. I certainly don't. But in any event, above 4 ounces of marijuana is a felony. Above a half ounce of marijuana is a presumption for distribution. So I think that's how you're dealing with it.
So if I get a traffic stop, and you determine, okay, I smell the marijuana, so I'm gonna search, and if you determine that I got a less than an ounce or whatever you just said, that you won't add that charge or take me to jail, you just give me the ticket for speeding?
I think what happened is if the officer makes the decision whether to make that charge, he would know that the city of Little Rock says, we're not that worried about that. Now, it doesn't deal with use of marijuana that causes a person to be impaired while they're driving. That's totally exempt. So if somebody's driving all over the road because they're high, this ordinance has no impact on that. But I'm not a cop, and never have been, and I really think that maybe.
Maybe the chief could explain it to me.
Chief?
Mayor, board, so I've got some things that I wanted to touch on related to this proposal. And I agree with Director Richardson in that given the challenges that we face in our city, that marijuana possession, personal use should be a low priority. I can tell you that in practical application for our police force, that's exactly what it is today. I challenge you to find anyone currently sitting in the Pulaski County Jail who was solely charged with possession of marijuana. You're not going to find it. We don't have the jail space for it. You can't get people in the jail for nonviolent felonies. Not misdemeanor marijuana, nonviolent felonies. Think about what I just said.
We know that.
So it's a low priority for us. I promise you that. I also agree with Mr. Richardson that of some of the unintended consequences that maybe that you could look at and say that disproportionately black males are charged more often with some of these kinds of things. When you look at the traffic for more serious offenses, particularly violent crime in our city, more often than not, both victim and suspect are African American. So we're coming into contact with that group of that demographic more often, and sometimes you find these lesser offense things that individuals are cited for. There's 4 or 5 things that I just want to talk about to get you all to consider some of the unintended consequences of this proposal. The first thing that it says in there is under the purpose, it talks about the investigation. So it's very common for us during a traffic stop to start with a traffic violation, which is reasonable suspicion. You make that traffic stop, I've got a busted tail light out. When I walk up to that vehicle, there's a strong odor of marijuana coming from that vehicle. You're smart individuals who have been in the criminal justice system, or just someone who's using good common sense. The first thing they're going to say when we ask them a question, hey, I can smell weed. Do you guys have some marijuana in here? They're going to take it out of their pocket and they're going to hand it to you. Because their goal is to get you to walk away from that vehicle. So for us, we never stop at just the odor of marijuana and think that we're not going to search this vehicle, we're not going to search the occupants off of this odor of marijuana. So that would significantly prohibit our ability to look further into things where we consistently make significant felony, violent crime arrests that started from the odor of marijuana. So that's what prohibited us from investigating those things would do. So, and then when you look at the jail itself, so the jail itself has 1,210 beds that it has at full capacity. On any given day, there are 375 to 400 beds that are taken up by individuals waiting to go to state penitentiary. There's another 75 to 80 that are going to federal penitentiary. So that leaves us about 750 beds that Pulaski County and Little Rock has access to. We're 200,000 citizens. We're the largest city in the state, and we're looking at 750 beds. So it doesn't take us very long to fill up the jail. Now, Mr. Doc Holliday has done a great job, and it's been a significant period of time since we've had the jail, quote unquote, closed, or where we couldn't get someone in there. That hadn't happened in a long time because they're doing an effective job of managing the jail, and then we're doing an effective job of managing the streets. By that I mean, we know what threshold you're going to have in order to get someone, quote unquote, in jail. If you don't have someone with a weapon or some kind of violent offense, if they're taken to the jail, even if it's for a felony offense that doesn't meet that area, 99% of the time, they are processed, cited, and sent out the side door, never see the inside of the jail. Never. It just does not happen. We don't have the space for it. So that's one of the things there. And then the next thing I have here, when you're talking about driving impaired, you mentioned that. We just met with a young lady who's a new director of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and they're wanting us to increase our sobriety checkpoints. I've done one or two since I've been here. We told them we would commit to that because we're seeing an increase with those kinds of things. Driving impaired increased in cities where, even though he has not talked about legalizing marijuana, that's what you kind of almost unintentionally saying when you talk about, it's a low priority, we're not going to do anything about it. It creates kind of a laissez-faire approach to that. Second with that, you've seen an increase where states that have legalized marijuana or they have this kind of step-back approach is a significant increase, about 16% in pedestrians killed. Who are basically walking high. So another unintended consequence. The next thing, look at the unintended message that we're sending to our youth. Even though this addresses adults only, when we say to adults that it's okay that, that everyone just kind of smoke marijuana, police are just going to kind of drive by, we don't have time to fool with that kind of stuff, it creates this atmosphere that everything is kind of wide open. Let me tell you how I learned that we can't do that in Little Rock. I came up with a very strict pursuit policy that says that if it was not a violent felony offense, we would not pursue. As soon as we put that in place, we had cars literally pulling up at Ashland University where we were out at the intersection trying to conduct traffic where the people are cruising, pull up to the police officer, burn rubber, swirling around tires in the middle of the intersection and take off because they knew we couldn't pursue them. So when you have to watch where you do certain things, our city is not one to where we can have this relaxed kind of atmosphere on any kind of illegal drug. We just should not do that. Last thing, when you talk about conflict in our city, 80% of our crime is property crime, 20% is violent crime, but it's more of our some of the Achilles heel of our city when people mention Little Rock. The common denominator of conflict amongst our violent offenders is often drugs. It's often drugs. It's the common denominator of the conflict. So we don't want to send that message that this is wide open and okay. We're already headed down the road with the medical marijuana once they get through all of the administrative hurdles for that. What you will see come behind that medical marijuana is a black market of folks who are bringing marijuana in to sell because the gates are wide open for that. Yes, we will have dispensaries that will be selling it, but the black market will also step in and begin to pump marijuana into your community because they see it as a good business model. Marijuana is more acceptable here in this community, so we want to push our marijuana into those areas. So we already have some challenges that, around the corner that are headed our way as it relates to marijuana. Lastly, when you look at the 50 individuals that we arrested, it was either earlier this year or last year for the big takedown that we had that we think has resulted in some of the significant decrease that we're seeing in violent crime today. Common denominator. Many of those individuals had gang affiliations. To Director Richardson's point, gangs are not where they were in the 1990s as far as being geographically and color association. It's more of a business model. Two things with those violent individuals that we took down that we feel like significantly has helped our city today. They had gang affiliation, and their number one source of revenue, drug selling. And one of the common drugs that they sell, marijuana. So any initiative that makes it look like that we've opened up the gates to kind of just to allow our officers to look the other way or not fool with that kind of stuff, and I know that's not what the language says, but it implies that kind of attitude, I just don't think would be good for Little Rock. We have too many challenges in our city on a good day, and these are some of the unintended consequences that I hope that you will consider before we will pass something like this.
All right, thank you, Chief. We got several other board members that wish to comment on this. Director Campiris, you're next, please.
He answered my question. Hey, I'm fine.
Okay. Now, Director Fortson.
Well, I think the chief has answered any questions I was going to ask, other than I just have a real lack of comfort. And as a policy, the city's saying, well, we really don't mean to be strict in enforcing that law. We just had debates in here talking about two mayoral candidates who ignored one city ordinance, and we talked about why have an ordinance, why have a law if it's going to be ignored, and that's an entirely different area, but the principle is the same. If a law is a law, I just don't think we properly adopt a policy saying, well, we really didn't mean to worry about that law. And thank you for your comments, Chief. I thought they were on target.
Director Hendricks.
Well, my comment was much earlier. I was just going to say all these things that's in this ordinance. I'm aware of it, but I've never been exposed to none of this stuff. Nah. But I want to ask this question. I've been sitting here a long time. So this is an ordinance that we would be voting on with no other information? The reason why I asked this question is that, Tom, we need to work on my ordinance and mince it down to a paragraph. That's all, just being.
Well, he'll take that under consideration. Director Peck.
The chief addressed my questions, thanks.
Okay. Director Richardson.
You got that, Tom? Narrow her down. No, you don't. Listen, this is not legitimizing it. It's not encouraging it. Having worked directly with young people for a number of years, I see one of them out in the audience right now that I worked with over 20 years ago, and that's the last thing I would want to encourage. We're not decriminalizing. We're not legitimizing. We're not even encouraging it. I mean, you can be cited without arrested. Can you not, Chief? Can you be cited without arrested?
I can, and that is, as I mentioned in my beginning piece, that's pretty much our practice today. If you have possession of marijuana today in our city, 99% of the time you're going to get a citation and sent down the road, provided that you have nothing else.
But that could be dependent upon the officer, correct? And if I had a smart mouth with the officer, that would be his basis for his charge, correct?
Yes, sir. You can talk yourself into jail.
Well, I mean, you can look yourself in the jail in some places around here. I mean, quiet as kept, you can look yourself
But
in the
even
jail.
the officer that has that had that conflict or that friction with a citizen for possession of marijuana, and he says, well, you know what, you're being disobedient, or you won't give me your name so I can fill out this citation, so I'm going to take you to jail for it. Here's the problem: the jail's not going to put you in the jail. The jail will not house you for possession of marijuana. That's not going to happen. They're going to process you, and you're going to go out a side door.
And do we have people housed in county jail for failure to pay child support, or are the people I used to work with just exaggerating?
No, I'm sure there are people in jail for failure to pay child support.
Failure to pay child support, which is a felony.
Most of the cases that I'm aware of that people actually go to jail for is a felony amount in what they owe. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I guess for me, I think it would be a clear sense if we had a more specific, a little bit more specificity with who we're holding, how long we're holding, and why we're holding them there. Because periodically we get these requests for an increase in sales tax for jail space, and I'm not certain that we can jail our way out of problems that we're facing in our community. I think a large portion, you would agree, you know this, of both the victims and perpetrators of a lot of these violent crimes are black male, poor black males,
yes, sir,
and coming from real specific geographic parts of our city. Part of some of these places where we're tearing some of these houses down tonight. So I think that I look forward to the discussion. I don't have too much more to say. I thank you for answering the questions, Chief, and I appreciate your expertise and your leadership in our city.
Thank you.
You know, Director Richardson, I think you should be comforted by the fact that it is a low priority. You know, one of my fundamental concerns with this is that we ask these officers to take their oath, hold up their hand, and take an oath to support and defend the laws of the state of Arkansas. And you're asking them to ignore that.
No, we're
when you
not.
talk about the issue of an arrest. Well, you either arrest or you don't arrest. I mean,
You can cite.
you either arrest or you don't arrest. And if you're asking them to support the laws of the state of Arkansas, and then you're saying, well, we don't want you to arrest people, even though they have probable cause to have committed a crime, that's always been a problem I've had with the idea. Again, I'll tell you, from a prosecution standpoint, and that's where the fundamental bottom line is from a prosecution standpoint, I can promise you that this prosecutor's office, as probably most of the prosecutor's offices in the state of Arkansas, are not putting people in jail for a misdemeanor violation of possession of marijuana.
So when you arrest them, Mayor, where do you take them? You said you're gonna arrest them. Where do you take them after you
Where
arrest
does
them?
an officer take them?
Yes, sir.
Well, they either get cited or they get booked and let out the back door.
I'm saying cite them. The whole notion of transporting them and utilizing resources that could be dedicated to solving some of the violent crime in our community, using those resources, jail space, dollars to house and hold those people there. Those are resources that could be better used. I mean, it's like, I was thinking the other day, man, if we spent half the money spending money on poor people than we do spending and studying them, we'd make a lot of difference. And I just think that, we just spent half, you hear me, half of what we spend in studying them on them. It could be a significant difference. And I just think, Mayor, to the extent that we're utilizing vital jail space, resources for our police officers having to transport people to jail, I'm not saying just go by and don't pay attention to it. There are ways we can cite them beyond arresting them, and that's all I'm saying.
Okay, good. Well, we'll have a chance to have everybody's consideration on this on Tuesday.
I appreciate it.
Okay, resolution number 16, a public hearing, where we will be discussing the projected use of funds through CDBG. Mr. Moore, do you have any update on that? Anything more you want to add to that?
Mayor, members of the board, this is our annual approval to submit the plan, and it's been through public hearings, and we can pull the document up that shows the funding sources, Scott, our funding. So very similar to what you all have seen in the past, and I don't know if Victor wants to come up and just talk about the process. I mean, as the Director of Housing, Mr. Turner.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the board, it's a process that HUD has laid out for all jurisdictions that get direct entitlement from HUD, that we have to have a consolidated planning committee that's an advisory committee that we present proposed activities to. We have public meetings around the city, and then we also have 2 public hearings. We advertise it in the newspaper for public comment as well. And the last part of it is you all approving those sources and uses. The list is fairly consistent with what we've done over prior years, with the biggest chunk of it toward owner-occupied rehabilitation.
Director Adcock, do you have a question?
Mr. Moore, well, I have 4 questions. I've been saving my questions for this.
On this issue?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Moore, I think in the past we've spent $75,000 on road changers. I noticed it's reduced down to $50,000. Secondly, we just heard from a Jefferson Comprehensive Care System that is over on the east side of Little Rock, and yet we've got $175,000 in here. No, I guess it's $75,000 for $175,000 for St. Vincent's. Third, I do not see any emergency housing money in here. And fourth, have we received our money from last year? Because I continue to hear from people that have been on the list for emergency housing. They're calling me saying that they're being told that the money has not come in yet. And yet I think I heard here a few weeks ago that the money did come in. So those are my 4 questions.
In regards to emergency rehab, that's included in the large total of the owner-occupied rehab. It's just an activity within that amount.
Okay.
So all of it is considered owner-occupied rehabilitation. The World Changers, that has been the budgeted amount for the last 2 or 3 years, that 50,000. What has happened in some instances, we had to go back and finish some work that the youth didn't get done, and we may have put some more funds in it. And then the St. Vincent part, we do set aside money for the health clinic out in East Little Rock, which is open to all. And I think the city put some general fund money in, as well as we put some CDBG funds in it. But I believe the presentation you heard earlier was specifically for those clients at Jericho Way, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they said that they would see any clients.
Well, I'm sure they'll collaborate with St. Vincent on some of those, keep from duplicating services.
And the final one was, has the money come in?
Every year, the money comes around June or July. So this year's allocation, I believe we just got not long ago. So generally what happens, it's exhausted pretty much when we get it. The city advances the money, we reimburse the city those funds.
Okay, and I think someone said that this last year that we got some added funds because of the president's bill that he passed. Did we get added funds from what we was expecting?
We didn't get any added last year for our regular allocations. This year we got a little bit of a bump up, about 7% increase in CDBG.
And how much did that amount to?
Last year we got 694. This year is, last year we got 1.2 million. This year is 1.3.
Okay, and what are we going to do with that extra million? I haven't seen anything come before the board on how to spend an extra $1 million.
Yeah, it's all spread out in that budget that you see right here.
But Victor, go over those numbers again, 'cause last year compared to this year.
Last year, our CDBG allocation was $1,248,933, and then this year you see it's $1,353,727.
Yeah, it's not $1 million increase.
No, ma'am, no.
Okay, $100,000
Yes,
increase.
about 100,000.
Okay, so where are we on taking more applications? 10 years ago, we had like 600, and every year we haven't taken any new applications because we was trying to work through all those that we had. About last year, we was told we was down to 60. And then after that, it seems like that we've not been brought up to date on where we are on the list that we had, and when are we going to take more applications?
Yeah, I have to give you exact numbers on that, but yeah, several years ago, we used to take all the applications at one time, and I think the board had said not to take any more until we got through the list, which was about 469 families. We've worked our way through that list. I have to give you the exact number where we are. Right now, we're taking applications on an ongoing basis, so individuals can call us, and we're taking their information. What we found, some of them may not own their property. A lot of other issues maybe with ownership, so we're trying to screen them and vet them as we work through.
Well, I think that this board would like to have some criteria, because I know there's lots of people out there that are waiting for you to take applications. So if we could have something by next week of what the criteria is, and maybe even an application form that we could pass out to our neighborhood meetings and get people applying. Because how have you reached out for people to apply?
Yeah, we, in our neighborhood meetings, we let people know. We also, in the advertisement in the newspaper, we put that out there. We do have some existing applicants that we're working on, so we never have a shortage of applicants, so we're working through people that call year-round to ask for assistance.
Well, I know we don't have a shortage, Victor, but we have people that we have been telling out in the neighborhood meetings, we're not taking applications yet. We're not taking applications yet over the last several years. So I think it's time that we let people know that, you know, if you want to apply, now's the time to apply.
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Victor, would you, I know just for the edification of the board, when we look at these funds, would you just briefly give a narrative on the distinctions between these uses, owner-occupied rehab, and then down in the Home Investment Partnership Program, you've got $649,000 for home allocation, and then you've got money for acquisition and rehab in the next one. Would you just briefly elaborate on what those
Sure.
do, the differences between, in them?
Sure. The Community Development Block Grant Program is probably the most diverse program. We can use it for housing, public services, infrastructure, a variety of activities. The Home Investment Partnerships Program, which is about middle ways of the chart, can only be used for housing.
What does that mean?
It can be acquisition rehab. It can be down payment assistance. It can be for new construction. You see the first line.
How do we use it? We don't buy houses for people.
No, we acquire properties, rehab them, and sell them. We also have an allocation that we give to nonprofit organizations, CHODOs, Community Housing Development Organizations, to build houses or acquire houses, rehab it, and sell them. The home buyer assistance, that's a form of down payment assistance or mortgage subsidy that we provide to individuals. Also in our home program, we go up to 80% of area median income. You can do that with the Community Development Block Grant Program, but we restricted it to folks at 50% of median and elderly and disabled for our housing activities. So that's the major difference. The home program is a little higher income individuals that benefit from it because most of those are home buyers.
And the owner-occupied rehab?
Owner-occupied rehab, as I said, we target families at 50% of area median income or less or disabled. They have to have owned and occupied their structure for at least a year. And as part of that, we do emergency repairs, so individuals may have sewer, roof, those type of issues with their home.
That's the list we've kept up with. People come in and want up to a certain amount of money, isn't it $35,000?
25.
25,000?
Yes, sir.
And then just explain to me again, under the Home Investment Partnership Program, what's the 2018 home allocation? The $650,000?
Yeah, that's just short for the, HOM is just short for the program. That's just the acronym for it.
But
that's just saying what we're getting in 2018 is $649,720.
So
under
how does
that
the public
program.
know what that money's used for?
Yeah, that's in our action plan every year that we put out, that's posted on our website, and that we have the various meetings around the city that says what we use the home program for, which has to be for housing activities. So
I know, but if I'm a citizen out here, how do I know what that means?
well, like I say, it's listed in our update, in our consolidated plan, or we have brochures that describe the programs as well.
And, which means what, we pay interest down, we take off the top $25,000 of the
No.
value of the house? What do we do?
No, we provide down payment assistance. We also
Down payment assistance, so we'll pay
Right.
whatever the down payment is, the 3%?
Yeah,
or
we mainly been using it for gap financing. So, for example, if a home buyer is purchasing a house that we have money in and it's selling for $110, and they qualify for $100, we fill that $10,000 gap with some of that down payment assistance. So we call it a mortgage subsidy.
Okay, do you have any kind of a report on our previous use of these funds you could provide to us?
Yes, our
And
annual.
break it out with those kinds of details?
Yeah, each year we have to do an annual performance report 90 days after the end of our program year. It lists number of beneficiaries have been assisted for each one of the programs.
Do you expend all the money
Yes,
each year?
yes.
Okay, I'm just curious how people find out about it and how they know what to use it for. So,
Mayor, I have a couple more questions.
go ahead.
What is program income, 2017 program income?
Yeah, we have to put a projected number. So, for example, we invest in a house, we build it, sell it. That money that comes back to us, less whatever we assisted the buyer, that's program income. And then we have to turn around and use that program income for eligible activity. So, say you build a house, you sell it at $70,000. We only get, say, 60 back. That's 60,000 of program income. So we have to include it in our proposal to HUD of how we're gonna use program income and how much we anticipate getting back.
Is any of this money used for the CDCs?
Yeah, we don't have, quote, any of them that's really called CDCs, but we do have some chodos in Little Rock. That line item you see, chodo set aside, that would be what you would.
Okay, we have one that used to be a CDC that wants to become active again. Where on here is there any money to help them get reestablished?
Yeah, that would be in the chodo set aside, and the HUD requirements now is that organization has to be back up and running for at least a year. They have to have a paid employee, and so once they've met that criteria, then they would be eligible to apply for some of the chodo set aside.
But isn't that kind of discriminating against people starting a new CDC or reestablishing an old CDC? If we're saying they've got to be in there for 1 year, they've got to have an employee. If they get to 1 year an employee, they've got their feet on the ground.
Yeah, we don't have any control of those rules. That's in the federal regulation that HUD established. And one of the reasons they did that was a lot of organizations would put up just kind of an organization that really wasn't an organization to tap into that money, and then they weren't able to sustain. So now they want to know you're a legitimate nonprofit that's doing work. That's why they want you to have, it didn't say you have to be full-time, but paid staff, and that you've been around for at least a year.
Okay, let's go back 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
We had about 14 CDCs in this city, all operating. And we was helping them with money from someplace. Now, I know we had the group out of New York, but we also had local money. So where in this was we getting local money?
Yeah, you may be referring, some years ago, we had LISC that had partnership with the banks, and they were assisting a lot of the nonprofits. And I think back then, the city also had a little small set aside that they gave to the CDCs, if that's what you're referring to.
So a few years ago, we was giving, I think, $25,000 to some of the CDCs.
Well, I'm not familiar with that, but I know we now, the ones that are doing projects, they get, they make money from the project, and then we also pay them a developer's fee.
Let's not say the ones now, because we have no CDCs now. All you have is chotos.
But in the past,
we have limited it down to 2 chotos, and we continue to use the same 2 chotos because we're not getting a new chotos or a new CDCs established.
we have 3, and a lot of the chotos were also CDCs back in the late 90s. They were one and the same. So they may have been using the term CDC, but they were also a choto as well. And currently we have 3. BCD is 1, University District is 1, and Affordable Housing in Little Rock.
Okay, and affordable housing then has just established that in the last year or 2?
They've been a choto with the state. They just reapplied with the city a few years ago.
So there's nothing that we have in this or any other housing funds that we would reestablish a CDC?
Not in this, no ma'am.
Okay, I would like to see something that we could understand up here of each one of these lines, please.
Sure.
For next week. Kind of, this is what it is, and this is the city board's definition of it.
Yes.
And how people would, as the mayor said, how does an average citizen sitting at home today understand that there's money available to help them with the down payment, to buy the interest down, to get home repairs, and all of this. So I'd like for you to give them their telephone number where they can call you tomorrow and find out about all this.
371-6811.
And that's your desk phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Do you have
Victor,
a cell phone?
would you, I mean, there's some board members that probably, and the nuance between what a community development, CDC, Community
Corporation.
Development Corporation, and a community housing development organization. Would you explain the nuance between the two?
Yeah, with a community housing development organization, there are specific criteria. One is they have to have a board that's at least 1/3 of it is low moderate income individuals. Either they are low mod themselves, live in a low moderate income neighborhood, or represent a low to moderate income organization. As I mentioned, they have to have as part of their main mission development of housing. And this is all defined in HUD's regulations. So most of your chotos are housing developers. The CDCs have historically done a lot of things, economic development, They've done counseling. They've done just a variety of things. And one of the reasons why some of them faded was because of lack of resources to be able to sustain themselves. They could have continued to do the housing piece, but a lot of them were stretched doing a whole lot of other different things in the neighborhoods. And most of them were community-based in that particular neighborhood that they worked.
Okay, very good, thank you, and if you'll provide that information to us, we'd appreciate it. Director Wright, you're next.
Thank you. When you're putting together the explanation of the items on the on your budget, will you please, or if you could include in there an explanation to me or to the board of the restrictions required by HUD and ones we have that are more restrictive than HUD? I thought I understood you to say that HUD allows one thing, but we restrict it even further.
Yeah, the one you're talking about in particular is owner-occupied rehab. Yeah, we have targeted a lower income clientele and made it elderly and disabled. One is those are the individuals from our study that have the most need, and two, the 80% income level, you can tap in that through the Home Investment Partnerships Program. So if we went up to 80 with CDBG, then instead of that 400 and some list we had a few years ago, it'd probably been 3,000 because you're got a wider range in the income. So we're helping the least of these, the ones at the lowest of the income strata.
Okay. So are there any other restrictions that we are even more restrictive in than the feds require?
No,
what is your federal register on this? CFR what?
Yeah, for the CDBG program is 24 CFR 570.
570?
And for home program is 24 CFR Part 92.
Okay, I'm going to look up some of this myself. Now, regarding the additional funds for the SHODOs and nonprofits, are there any Community Reinvestment Act funds that are, I know at one point they were participating with the CDCs and SHODOs and all that. Are those opportunities still available?
I think there have been some banks that have encouraged nonprofits to build in certain areas to get them some CRA credit per se, and I think they've also, I think First Security is one that had a program that they've worked with individuals to help with their CRA.
So that might be an option there, Joan. Next question, and it has to do with something I'd asked previously, but it all is involving CDBG. The maps that you delivered to me, Mr. Moore, that supposedly showed the low to moderate income areas that were CDBG eligible in my ward. Well, on the map that I received, it actually had Kensington neighborhood included in extremely low income. And I think that's not true.
Yeah, and those maps were based on the
median income.
Yeah,
and I need
2016 information.
But I don't want median, I want mean, because that's ridiculous to include Kensington in an area where you're saying that their income is $23,000 a year. That's just not the truth. There's nothing over there less than $150,000, and they go up from there. So that map has to be redrawn. I need to have a work session. Y'all sit down with me and explain to me how that map was drawn, and explain to me how that could possibly be true when somebody in that income bracket couldn't afford a lot over there.
Yeah,
I can't afford to live over there.
Yeah, the information I work with planning, they pulled it from census data, and some of it was block groups. It may not have been a whole neighborhood, but it is based on the census.
But I don't want median, I want mean income.
That's the way it's median income. HUD we don't do it by mean. It's the median income. That's every program they have is based on your
Mr.
median
Moore, how do
income.
I officially challenge that map? Because that's not true. You know that's not true. You've been to Kensington. There is no way that that's true.
Well, on the definition, what we're using, I don't think there's any way to challenge that. I mean, that's, the Department of Head, I guess we could have said something.
Can we
to-
not check why did they choose that section?
Okay, well,
Those
I just need
particular
to look at,
houses?
we'll sit down and go over the map and with you. and-
I need somebody to do that
Okay.
as soon as you can. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
I would just wanted to thank,
Victor.
I want to thank you for the street, that 20th and Ringo. On 20th and Ringo, I did find that house. Did you ever find it? That it was boarded up?
Yeah.
24th and Ringo.
Yeah, I think we did find it.
But that,
Yes, ma'am.
whoever needs to do that, that house needs to come down. Okay? In fact, Ward 1, we got a whole lot of houses need to come down. Good report.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Adcock.
One more thing, Victor, on the, Mr. Moore, the Carolink Meals on Wheels, are we still paying two different senior centers out of another budget and not out of Carolink's?
Yeah, I believe the city provides general fund money for them to deliver meals, I believe, at the community centers. And then we provide CDBG money that delivers them to their homes.
Okay, so all the senior centers at the community centers.
I don't know about all, but I do know that some of the meals
I
are
know at
delivered.
one time at West Central and Southwest was both coming out of
I think that's
general
right.
fund.
We've never gotten any, so I know it wasn't coming out of general fund.
You don't have Meals on Wheels?
Not have Meals on Wheels.
What do you eat?
They don't eat there.
I know Southwest did at one time. So, Mr. Moore, is there any reason that we could not put that under the CDBG instead of paying for it out of the general budget or out of Parks and Recreation's budget?
You know, I'll look at that, but I remember when we wanted to expand the program, you know, we made the decision that that's where, and they're operating out of our community centers, so that's why I had it in the, in that part of the budget.
Well, I know that the food comes from Carolink's.
Mhm.
So, okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Hendricks, you're next, please.
I wanted to say to Director Adcock, the money was decreased heavily by the CDBG money, so I was one of the ones responsible for suggesting that Mr. Moore cut these people off from coming down here when the money was not there. I don't think we get anywhere by lying to people, because that's what it is. It's a white lie that you would tell somebody to come down here when there's no money. So I tell the people throughout the city, the money had the money been reduced, Bruce, drastically?
It had been, and we would report that each year, but as you just heard earlier, we actually got an increase, to me, which is remarkable considering what they was facing.
But it wouldn't allow you to open up the gates for these people to come pouring in here.
No, I mean, you know, I stopped that a long time ago because that just led to more calls to you all, saying, you know, why haven't I gotten my project, or why hadn't people come out to inspect and come up with a cost estimate? Because we had 400 homes on the list, or individuals, so that's why we stopped it.
You stopped because I told you to. I called you and gave you the blues. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. You're so kind.
Director Richardson, you're next, please.
All right, Bruce. One last thing. I think you made mention of us expanding it, and I think typically we've expanded it, we reduced it. I think just that approach with micromanagement from up here demonstrates the dangers of us addressing programming rather than policy. I mean, micromanaging departments has been somewhat problematic with respect to individuals up here not running those departments. So I think that highlights your comments about expansion over time, reduction over time. I think that speaks to the dangers of micromanagement from up here.
Director Adcock, you're next, please.
I think, Mr. Moore, that Mr. Turner just said they are now taking applications, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you.
You know, I tell people all the time, I learn something new every day, and and believe me, I wrote that down.
How about not taking applications?
Yes, we are taking applications.
I think and I know the difference is, what we used to do, I think initially we'd be at the Hinton Center, or actually, we used to be down here in the, on the first floor of the West Wing, and you'd see people lined up out the door, and I'm like, what is going on? And so I think we obviously have stopped that big concentrated effort, but apparently we slowly are taking in applications that come in. And I will say that most people that need these services are aware of them. Because we have the information in our resource centers. It's really just a matter of, filling out an application in 2018 and maybe having funding available in 2021. And I think it gives individuals a false sense of my house is going to get fixed. And so that's why we wanted to try another strategy.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. I just want to let the board know that the ordinance is forthcoming. Tom and I are working on the one that has to do with the change of city government going to the general election, hopefully. And I'm begging you all, I don't usually do that, but I would love for you all to consider.
Is that to be on the agenda for the second week in June, or just for discussion?
Yeah, second, yeah, but I'm really having to work on that thing, and I'm asking Tom to just cut it down. And I'm just, the ordinance is asking you all to send it to the people, and we are not the people. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Moore?
I need to clarify because you sent me an email at 12:48 over the weekend in the morning. That's saying that you wanted on Tuesday's agenda, which was the 5th. But is it the 5th or the 19th? Okay, but then over the weekend you asked for it to be. We don't have, first of all, I don't think, well, according to Tom, we don't have, you hadn't sent him the ordinance at this point, is that correct? Okay.
So, I'm very confused on this. So, we're gonna have an ordinance that is gonna be on the agenda for consideration in the second meeting in June. It, just like we have with any of these ordinances, we'll have input, board input, public discussion input. It can be moved on immediately. It can be held on first reading. It can allow more people to talk about it. I assume that's what we're going to be doing on the second meeting in June. Is that right? Yes, go ahead, Director Hendricks.
Okay, you're saying for discussion, I want it to be exactly like we treated the 2007 mayoral when we got it on the ballot. In other words, on the 19th of May is the day that we will vote on the ordinance. Is that right? 19th. I can't hear you, Bruce.
Okay, you said May.
June.
Okay, that's what we were just clarifying. Okay. So June the 19th.
So it'll
We
be
will
for
vote.
consideration and vote perhaps on June 19th. All right. And in the meantime, it will be distributed a week earlier at the agenda meeting. Correct?
Yeah, I hope
right.
it will be distributed soon.
Okay. At least by then.
By what date?
Well, that's June 5th,
Yeah, June 5th,
isn't it? Is that right?
because the 12th
June
is.
12th.
12th is.
It'll be at least distributed by June 12th.
Oh, sure. Oh, are you kidding?
Okay, and then, Mr. Carpenter, you're doing a memo to the board on a variety of the questions, and when do you think we can have that?
What question?
I can't hear you.
Friday.
This Friday?
Yes.
What
Okay.
question, Mayor? What do you-
Director
The-
Richardson asked for some background information about persons who have served on the board and where they resided.
I like his nerve. I didn't bother him.
And then the mayor asked for some questions about at-large versus ward elections and the legal issues that are involved, and there were several others.
Yeah, you were gonna do some other comparisons to other cities in terms of what they do,
And when will that?
what they've been doing.
When will you have that?
I'm trying to finish it by Friday. I'm tired of it.
Okay. I'm not
Okay.
speaking to him.
Okay.
Director Richardson.
It is a long list of questions, despite you not speaking to me, Director Hendricks. I want to make it plain and clear, Director Hendricks, for my colleagues and everyone else, unlike the mayoral issue, we're not talking about a special election. You're talking about getting this on the general election. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure we're clear on that, because it changes from week to week. It's not a special election. It's a general election. You want to try to get this on the general election. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody was clear on that.
November.
Okay,
6th.
all right.
Not special election. That's what I'm encouraging us to do, to
Okay.
put on the general election.
All right, Director Campuris, you're recognized, please.
Mark, when did we say we were gonna do Bruce's evaluation?
We're gonna do that 2 weeks from today.
Do you think we might consider doing it after the agenda after the regular session next week? Because I'm not gonna be there in 2 weeks, and I'd like to be there.
It's up, well, we are out of, we're not in a meeting right now. We were in a meeting when it was set for 2 weeks from then. So, I guess that could be brought up, at the meeting that we have next week.
I will be glad to bring it up at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you.
You know, we get into the situation where it's very difficult to get all 11 people at once. So I'm not going to be at the meeting on the 12th either. So, but I don't know that I'm needed in that regard. I mean, I'll give you my recommendations, and
Then if you're not gonna be there and I'm not gonna be there, then I'm gonna bring it up at the next meeting, and hopefully we'll do it. And that way Bruce will know we're gonna do it.
well, he knew we were going to do it in 2 weeks, but we change it. Director Wyrick.
Thank you. This is a different topic.
Okay, good.
Okay. Mr. Moore, in regard to our new process where Public Works picks up everything that's in the right-of-way, a couple of people have reported that there would be tree limbs and things like that that'll be on the side of the road, and there might be a board in there, and the staff is throwing the board out and picking up the tree limbs, leaving the board there. Another location where there was mixed items, some of the stuff was left. So I thought when we had Public Works pick up everything, we were going to save some manpower and some time by picking up everything if there was a pile of something on the side of the road. So can you tell me what we can expect from our new and improved plan? And has it started?
It has started.
And did it start?
Probably 3 weeks.
We're into it 3 weeks. Okay. So the behavior we're seeing is the way that our staff has been trained to pick up the stuff. So what's our real plan?
So, and I'll ask John to come up because he's directing it obviously on a day-to-day basis. But basically, as I've talked about before, and I said in the memo, our challenge is if someone calls it in, or one of our code officers sees it, then if we go the notice route, that's 7 to 10 days before we can even come back. So that's what causes sometimes for it to stay out there a lot longer than anyone wants. So what I've said is Public Works is going to pick, and they've got the crew from housing, they got the truck from housing, and there's a very targeted circle that they're going to stay in. Now I've got to hire about 2 more people to work with them, but that's obviously a challenge when it's 95 degrees outside, but I've authorized them to hire them, and I'm not sure where we are in the process. But the mixed piles do have somewhat of a challenge, so I don't know if John or Victor, John.
And by mixed piles, we're talking about tree debris versus other things.
Sure, we're talking yard waste versus construction debris or furniture or other
Okay.
trash. The way we've been approaching those mixed piles, our yard waste crews are picking up what yard waste they can out of those piles. When we pick up yard waste and trash, we can't intermingle those and take them to the landfill. We have to keep them separated. That's why you're seeing maybe part of a pile being picked up, and what's remaining has to be picked up in a different process because it goes to a different spot at the landfill. That's why you're seeing separate actions happening at the same location. That's because of the rules that we operate under, as far as the landfill is concerned.
Well, construction material has never been picked up, right?
Correct.
So you distinguish that from people that leave furniture out there or people that leave appliances and move that out?
We're picking up all at the same time. We should be picking up construction debris, anything that's not yard waste. If it's a mixed pile that doesn't have yard waste in it, say it's shingles, construction debris, other stuff that we wouldn't have picked up previously, and say it's got a couch sitting next to it also, all that gets picked up if it has no yard waste. That should all be picked up at the same time. Appliances are a little different because there are some, depending on what kind of appliance, but everything should be being picked up
But somebody
at once.
just leaves construction debris out there, doesn't leave a couch out there,
we are now
picking that up too?
Yes.
The only thing is
I
tires,
hate saying
right?
that in public, but yes, we are now picking that up.
The only thing we're not doing is the tires.
Correct.
Right.
Tires.
Tires.
Yeah.
And I mean, these guys were very, they said, basically one of them said, all right, next thing you know, there's gonna be a house on the, on the side of the road, and, so we're trying to be practical, but, I mean, we're not gonna start picking up.
When these people cut these trees down and they leave these great big huge, logs out there, we're not picking those up.
No, what we're doing in those scenarios is we will go by, and that gets called in as a bulky item or a knuckle boom, something to be picked up. We'll go by and actually pick up the stuff that's within our parameters, what we typically will pick up, the 6-inch diameter, 6-foot length. Anything that's beyond that, that's too big for us to pick up with a typical yard waste crew, we are actually writing that down and going back and contacting the property owner and giving them the cost to haul off the rest of that. So we aren't doing it when we first show up if it's the very large tree material.
Well, one of the things that I think is happening is people aren't calling and telling you about the yard debris being there, and then somebody sees a pile of something and they just start throwing stuff in there.
Right.
So that's an issue, but you're saying that you will pick up the yard waste even if there's something in there.
We're making every attempt we can to try to separate that out.
Okay.
Now, obviously, you're not probably going to be able to get all of it. You're not going to probably pick through a pile of debris for a half hour or an hour at one location, because we'd never get through the
So
city.
if you come to a location and you've got yard debris and then you've got other things in there, well, you pick up the yard debris, so how does the rest of the stuff get set up to come back? Because chances are, they probably didn't call you and tell you.
Correct. Well, that's being put in the process. When we have a pile like that, it's written down and notified. We put it back into our list to schedule it to get it picked up as soon as possible.
Okay. All right. I was hopeful we could get everything at one time and our right-of-ways would be clean and everybody'd be happy.
But I will say this, it's a work in progress. We're continuing to try to figure out the best ways to do it. Right now, we're limited a little bit on how, because we have to separate that material, or it's in our best interest to separate that material out.
Okay.
As far as the landfill life and everything else are concerned, that's why we do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think we've exhausted everyone. So if there's no other business, thank you very much for attending.